So today we need to talk about Roe v. Wade being overturned and what to do next. Given that the Dobbs decision has now officially overturned Roe v. Wade, I felt it was important to interrupt my series on Roe and talk about something very pressing and very serious. Now that we're in this place, in a post Roe world, what do we do next? The question is a difficult one that's been going through my head for a while, even before the decision was overturned. The reality that I kept coming to and keep coming to is that we need to organize. But organize how? Doing what? How can how can we be most effective in a post Roe United States? The truth is, the answer to that question looks very different depending on where you're at, who you are, and what your own needs are at this time. So, what I'd like to do here today is throw some ideas and resources out and suggestions so that you can all perhaps seek out an answer to that question for yourself. Even if nothing here works for your specific case, perhaps it'll give you some sort of idea or ideas of where to get started. Because no matter where your talents lie, I guarantee there's a way for you to be useful and apply those skills that you have towards this cause. That said, I'll link everything that I do show on screen here in the video in the description down below. So to start with, I think it's most important to examine what to do if you or someone you know needs access to information regarding abortions. And I actually want to highlight an excellent Twitter account, Haley McMahon, at Mick Misoprostol. They have a tweet thread here that lists off several different sources that can be used to get information or access to medications and how they can be acquired. And I'm just going to walk you through some of this thread. However, this whole Twitter has a lot of useful information, and I really think it's worth looking it up and checking out the links in and of itself, as well as any other information provided on this particular Twitter. So we have here one thing that I want to show off first, and that's from the Digital Defense Fund, where there's a lot of information about how to protect yourself digitally. If you're going to look up any information beyond this point, beyond what you're seeing in this video, I highly recommend that you stay protected. How your phone documents your abortion experience and what to do about it. Risk, receipt for payment for your abortion and or travel in your inbox. Potential alternative, make an email account just for this purpose, then delete it after. Risk, period tracking app shares your data. Alternative, use privacy-driven period trackers like Yuki app. Now, a lot of people have actually talked about doing it by hand and going back to doing it through an actual physical calendar instead of doing it this way, something that could be easily disposed of if it was ever sought for, something that you could just throw out, destroy, shred, whatever. Risk, search history saved in your phone's browser and with your ISP. Alternatives, use a privacy-driven search engine like DuckDuckGo. Install a paid VPN to hide websites you visit from your ISP. Browse with Brave, Tor, or Firefox. Use a private browsing window or delete your browser history. If you have a risk for payment history, use cash and prepaid gift cards where possible. If you're worried about ad tracking and location tracking from apps and browser history, media activity, etc., in your phone settings, turn location tracking and mobile ID off. Risk for sensitive text messages, use encrypted chats like Signal or Wire. And so this is really where to start in all of this, because if you don't have yourself protected, your data can be used against you. Next, I want to highlight the website that was on that Twitter from Plan C. Plan C is a place where you can find access to pills to induce abortion. This is going to have information about how to get access to getting pills, using the pills, safety considerations, and this is where you're going to want to go and send people if they actually need any sort of care. The pregnancy pills are considered effective, I believe, up to about 13 weeks is the limit I've seen in the US. I've seen it go further in other countries. So just be aware of some of the limitations on it. That said, It is available, and it's something you can get access to potentially through this website if you're able to. So, next, I want to highlight this website, howtouseabortionpill.org, which provides even more information on how to use the pills. It's very useful. If there's anything you can't find on Plan C's website, you'll probably be able to find information here. So, going back to this tweet and the thread, you can also find information here referring to medical and legal help. And again, there's a lot of useful information on this page, and I really do highly recommend going there. Next up, if you have the funding available, and only if you have the funding available, I highly encourage you to donate to the National Network of Abortion Funds. They are a network of over 90 grassroots organizations that directly support people to get abortions that they want or that they need. And I imagine that a lot of their funding in the near future is going to be shifted towards the 26 states where abortion is going to be illegal now that Roe has been overturned. And I'm sure they'll be assisting people in whatever ways that they can. So if you look at the information about abortionfunds.org, you can see that the National Network of Abortion Funds builds power with its members to remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion access by centering people who have abortions and organizing at the intersections of racial, economic, and reproductive justice. They envision a world where every reproductive decision, including abortion, takes place in thriving communities that are safe, peaceful, and affordable. They envision a world where all people have the power and resources to care for and affirm their bodies, identities, and health for themselves and their families in all areas of their lives. And as we shift the conversation about abortion, it will become a real option, accessible without shame or judgment. This is perfect in terms of the way that things are supposed to be represented. Intersectionality, autonomy, collective power, and compassion are their values. This is the type of place that you're going to want to try to give your money to if you are, in fact, able to give money. Now, if maybe money's not the way that you can do things, if you have the time available, I highly encourage you to try to find any local grassroots reproductive justice groups in your area and try to find out what they need. While they'll likely know far more than I will what your local area needs and what you can potentially provide for these groups, I suspect that the one thing that most places need is more people to do the work. I know that in terms of volunteering, a lot of places need people to be able to pick up phones, to deal with the basic office work, other such things. And I'm not saying that that might not be where your specific local group needs, or what they are currently desiring in people that come to them. But whatever they need, you'll be able to potentially fill those roles. Other than that, also consider reaching out to any local abortion clinics that may still be open in your area and find out if there's a way you can volunteer. They might even have information on other groups that you could potentially join if you don't have any other places to start. Either way, you might find a way to help out in some sort of way. You can also consider joining any local protests that you happen to come across for abortion access, to try to move any politicians or to try to stand up and at least make the case known and hand out pamphlets and flyers or any form of protest in that regard. Or counter protests are also an option against anti-abortion activists if that's more your speed. However, just be careful whenever you're going out to these protests, because as we know from history, the police typically take the side of the anti-abortion activists, and you will probably be pushed into a bad spot. Further, other options. If you happen to be someone already active in an organization that does not center on reproductive justice, consider bringing up the ways in which reproductive justice affects all of the ongoing battles that we face daily. Reproductive justice isn't just about abortions and pregnancy and having the right to decide for oneself. It's tied to so many other struggles that affect our daily lives, including but not limited to the fight to protect the environment, the fight to defund the police, the fight to eliminate prisons, the fight for racial justice, the fight to end imperialism, and the struggles of labor movements and union organizing. And whatever your area is, there is a way to tie reproductive justice to it. A lot of people make their decisions whether to have a child or not to have a child based on a lot of these factors. Do they have to raise a child in a world where their child might fear the police? That influences the decision. Do they have to potentially raise a child in a world where they might end up in prison because of the prison pipeline? That's a decision factor that goes into all of this. When it comes to racial justice, same type of arguments and conversations. When it comes to the environment, with as much damage as we've seen to the environment, when there's been massive droughts throughout the west coast of the United States, and as droughts get worse across the globe, do you want to be raising a child in that environment? And a lot of people have opted not to have kids simply for that reason. The environment is a huge factor in all of that. So if you're dealing with any of these struggles, and with labor and the union organizing, that's a key one to tie reproductive justice to. First and foremost, a lot of people who work in unions are the people who would be affected by these decisions directly. And if you're not, it might be tied to how you can plan a family. Can you afford to have a child? Is it somehow a way that you can get health care from your job? Can you get all the benefits that you need in order to make raising a child an easier experience? And this even ties to things like eliminating landlords and making housing a right. Because if you know that you have a safe place to take care of kids, it might influence your decision. The thing is all of this is tied together in the conversation about reproductive justice and bodily autonomy. All of this influences our decision on a very social level and changes how much access we also have to abortion and the decision to either, again, decide to have a child or to abort in order to make a safe and proper decision for oneself. Now, especially since all of these issues are so tied together, you should bring these up in different groups and try to keep people talking about things and keep passing on information. And additionally, one other option that I have that I can throw out there is consider doing research or education work of any kind to help with the cause. This can range from anything from self-education, such as educating yourself about the history of abortion or any aspect of the abortion process, to reaching out to the global community to discover the tactics used by feminists across the globe and learning their unique versions of these very similar struggles. In fact, I really think that a key thing that a lot of people in the United States need to do, especially feminists, is start looking at the feminist struggles in Latin America. A lot of those struggles have been able to get a lot of their goals accomplished. And it would be very worthwhile for people to research and put out information talking about those movements and talking about how those movements could potentially provide information on how the movement in the US could be more effective. The more people who learn from these tactics, the less we have to reinvent the wheel, the better off we're all going to be collectively. We should all be learning from each other and growing from each other because this is one movement in a lot of ways, even though a lot of the movements are disjointed and separated because of imperial boundaries. So, another thing you could consider is joining a reading group if you can find one. Start reading with other people and creating these conversations and see what might form from that. As a brief aside, I do need to mention that the Discord community does have a reading group, and we're probably going to be doing a book on reproductive justice. We haven't fully decided what book we're doing, but even if that doesn't interest you, there's more availability in terms of space to create more book clubs on the server, and I welcome it. If you get people who are interested, by all means do it, if that's a space that you need, if you don't have one for yourself. Additionally, do talk to people in your life. That is really important. You have to explain to people in your life, if it's safe to do so, why these issues are so important, and try to sway people into realizing that bodily autonomy is the key issue, because we need to start moving in the direction of moving past the type of privacy argument that we saw from Roe. There needs to be better arguments presented to people that talk about just how important it is that bodily autonomy is maintained. And additionally, you can use the information that you've gotten from all these different resources to create pamphlets, videos, media of any kind to try to spread the message that you have, the information that you have learned, so that other people don't have to. So these are all just some suggestions on the ways you could try to help out. If you still feel like you don't know what to do, consider reaching out to some of the organizations, some of the ones I showed on screen, and even some local organizations, and ask them how you can help out. Even if maybe you don't think that you can help out right now, or that you don't feel like you have the option to do so, or don't know how to, some of these organizations might point you in directions in ways that I couldn't think of and that maybe you can't currently think of. Another alternative, of course, is always to forge your own path. But if you do that, I highly recommend you try not to duplicate efforts. Duplicating efforts only makes us weaker. We need to be organized and working on projects together. And if there's people who already have that information available, you should work with them if you can. That said, diversity of tactics is highly necessary, and we need to organize ourselves for the long haul because this is going to take a long time to even begin to start fixing. With that said, my name is Anarchist Tara. Please keep up the fight, and I hope you have a lovely day.